Hello, everybody. It is Brad and
Shane.
and welcome back to another IP Squared podcast.
Oh yeah.
Hey, look, I got it right that time,
Yeah.
Shane. Cool.
I knew you would do it.
Hey,
It
man,
was just a matter of time.
it took a lot to remember that. Well, so today, Shane, what are we talking about today?
Well, Brad, today we are talking about imagination, and specifically, we're going to focus on discussing with each other, like how first of all, what is imagination, and how do we use that in our lives individually to better realize our set and achieve goals that we have for our futures. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Okay. Wow, that sounds like a pretty interesting topic.
It should be. I'm excited to see what we come up with.
Okay. So first, just diving into imagination. What is the imagination? I think it's important that we clarify that.
Yeah. The way I understand it, well, the first thing I think about, kind of go back to that, is when you hear imagination, I always think of like children, right? It's being imaginative. At least to me, has always been something you associate with kids, like dreaming and playing make believe and things of that nature. But to me, the more I've been studying it, the past few months and trying to understand, I mean, it's an unbelievable power that I think we as human beings all kind of share, right? And we're capable of doing it as adults, right? We're capable of picturing different scenarios in our head and playing through it. And I think it's a pretty amazing power. And the more I meditate on it, the more I realize that this is something this powerful and this amazing. There's no way it's meant just for your younger years, right? I think there's a overall God-given purpose to it. It's being able to imagine that leads to, I think, anything. Pretty much just anything that we see in existence. I was going to say anything good, but you can use your imagination for bad as well. I think of just things I see every day, right? A beautiful car. Let's say you look at a nice cherry red Corvette Stingray, that just came out. Well, that didn't always exist. It's not like, the dawn of man happened and then Adam looked over across the Garden of Eden and Eve was just cruising in a in a red convertible, right? No, it started as an idea in the mind of a human being, right? It was imagined by man. They envisioned that it was their idea of perfection. What is the best possible thing I could create? And so it started as a thought in someone's mind, and they pictured it and they saw it and internalized it, and then they drew it out. The thought became materialized in I was going to say architectural plans, but in plans for the car, and then it became a reality. So the more I think about it, the more I see that imagination is a crucial aspect for turning what we picture in our ideal lives, turning that into a tangible reality. So that's how I understand imagination. How do you see it?
Okay. Yeah, I think my answer is maybe a little more simpler, maybe a little more scientific, but I look at the imagination. I mean, of course, we're going to dive into how we use our imagination, but I think of the imagination of having the capability to use one of your five senses or multiples of your five senses to see and smell, or whatever sense you're using, a mental image of something. And it could be something that you've seen in the past. It could be something that doesn't even exist yet, but just the capability to, as one of my past kind of theater instructors explained it to me, is you have to have the capability to see a movie in your head. Mm-hmm. So the way they kind of taught us back then was the inside of your skull is pretty much like a drive-in movie theater. Mm-hmm. And it's the capability to be able to tap into that and see a movie playing inside of your head, right? So when you're movie making, or you're thinking of audio, you're thinking of video, and you're thinking of all these different things, it's a capability to be able to imagine things, to create things, to create this mental image or this mental smell or this resemblance of something in your head. So that's the way that I look at imagination. So yeah, it's a very interesting topic, because I think, when the five senses come into play, there's a lot of really interesting things that you can do with your imagination.
Absolutely. One of the things I've been thinking about this a lot as we're talking about, hey, we're going to do this topic. As I'm kind of thinking about the imagination, one of I think the best benefits that it provides to us as we use it and cultivate it and get better at it on a daily basis is the feelings that it can evoke in you as you're imagining things. Like, one of the things I try to do every morning, I go through things that I'm grateful for, right? And it's not just, I'm grateful for my family, I'm grateful that I have a job, I'm grateful for... No, what I'm doing is, like, rather than, like, just knock off all the things, okay, I'm grateful for this, and this. I pick, like, 3 things. I try to make it different every day, so it's forcing me to think. But when I find something I'm grateful for, right, like, for example, like, I had this great moment with my little 4-year-old the other day. Like, I always put her to bed and just kind of sit with her and talk with her for a few minutes. And man, like, this particular night, she was just incredibly sweet and just affectionate, and it was nice to just kind of be laying there beside her, and she's just hugging me, and she'll just say, "I love you, Daddy," just something really simple like that. And I try to really be present there in the moment. But when I'm using my imagination, thinking of grateful things, what I'm doing is I'm reliving it to the best of my abilities. I close my eyes, and like a child, I imagine myself actually laying down there next to my little girl, and I can feel her hair in my hands. I can, like, smell, like, the the fresh shampoo smell, like, because we always give her a bath at the end of the night, and just imagine, like, her hand on my face, and it's things like that. And when you allow your imagination to put you in that spot, the emotions and feelings it evokes kind of overrides even things that you're going through just presently in your life. Any problems or worries that you have, it just tends to override it, and it just puts you in this heightened state. So I think the imagination can be a fantastic tool for getting you to a place of happiness and a heightened emotional state. The thing that's so interesting too about how the mind works, that I've studied, is that your subconscious mind, when you get into this kind of theta wave or deeper, like through, like, meditation or sleep, your subconscious mind cannot tell the difference between actuality and what you imagine. So that's one of the things that is very interesting when you constantly are using your imagination to relive these moments that have just been really special, or remind you of victory, or you're just happy or excited. Your subconscious mind can't tell that, hey, you're not actually doing this right now. It doesn't care. So cultivating that and repeating that over and over and making it a habitual thing to relive these moments through your imagination that have been very special to you puts you in a heightened emotional state, and it tends to bring more of those experiences into your life. That's what I've found.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. Really awesome experience, especially looking at it from the positivity angle.
Sure.
Definitely bringing yourself back to a place that you've been before, using all your senses, using touch, using smell, using vision. So yeah, it's a very powerful thing. I think, when we talked about, what do we do when we get angry, that's a very powerful way to kind of pull yourself out of anger, or really any other bad situation that may come up, is being able to use your imagination to put you in that happy place that we talked about.
Absolutely.
I think another thing too is I think as children, a lot of us, we have a very wild imagination that just runs in all different directions, and I think as we grow up as adults, those of us that go into, maybe movie making field or creative field or design field, interior design fields, fields where we have to use our imagination, I think we hold on to the capability to use our imagination, but we tend to use it for work purposes. Artists, for example, when you paint or whatever you may be doing as an artist, sculpting or whatever it may be, you're using your imagination. But again, it's for work. I think the rest of everyone sometimes forgets how to use their imagination.
Sure.
And I think, I think, as we talk through this, that's a lot that I want to cover here in this 30 minutes is, trying to focus more towards those individuals, right?
Absolutely,
so,
yeah.
Trying to, help those individuals, gain a sense over their imaginative powers to be able to take a couple step back. So when we're talking about goal setting, and we're talking about short-term goals and long-term goals, how do we do that? And so I know you and I have talked a lot in the past, and I think you and I are, very imaginative. We, from a creative standpoint, we use our imaginations a lot. I know you paint, I paint. I come from the field of art and design, and so forth and so on. But the way that I do it, and I know I've talked to you in the past about this, is that I use my imagination to envision my goals.
Sure.
So whether it's a short-term goal or a long-term goal, like I put myself in that moment. I want to be here in 6 months. I want to be here in 1 year. I want to be here in 5 years. And that's when, you're talking about the subconscious mind. I'm trying to put my subconscious mind in a state to where I can say, this is how I envision my end goal. And I try my best to see it. I try to see whatever it may be, the car that I'm going to be in, the home that I'm going to be in, the vacation that I want to take. I try to envision all of the visual surroundings that will be around me. I try to breathe in and try to smell the different things that match up to those visions. I try to touch the different things that I'll feel, whether it's the beach and it's sand, or whether it's being in an orange grove and smelling oranges and stuff like that. But I want to make sure that we're building that connection and letting everyone know that imagination is a very powerful thing. So when you're trying to envision where you'll be in the future, imagination is a very powerful tool to help you get where you're going to be. And I've said this, a million times, Shane, and you've said similar things back to me, is that there have been things that have happened in our past, current day, where, we've envisioned something using our imagination, and 5 years later, we just forgot that we even thought about that. And here we are 5 years later, and it's like, oh man, I remember I thought about this.
It's a tangible reality.
And it's almost like a deja vu thing that kind of happens because you've been there before. And so, for those of us that get tied up into work, and for those of us that get tied up into just, day-to-day motions, and kind of look at the imagination as more of a childish thing that you're suppressing, I think it's important to note that from a goal-setting standpoint, it's an extremely powerful tool. And who wouldn't want to be Peter Pan? So I guess one of the thing is that I want to say is that like I mentioned in another podcast, I go to Disney World a lot, and they have a pavilion in Epcot that is called the Imagination Pavilion. It's pretty interesting, and there's a phrase that they have, which is one little spark, which it kind of goes to what I'm talking about.
Sure.
Like all it takes is one little spark of the imagination, and that can get you where you see yourself in 1 year. That can get you where you see yourself in 20 minutes or whatever it may be. So it's extremely powerful. So if you're not using your imagination today, I would encourage everybody to start trying to use more and more of their imagination to, number one, get to their happy place whenever they need to remove themselves from the crazy day-to-day, but also from a goal-setting perspective. If you begin to use an exercise of just focusing through meditation and imagining where you want yourself to be in a year, 5 years from now, you'll surprise yourself with how powerful that is when that day comes and you have that deja vu moment and you're like, wait a minute, I've been here. And it's like, yep, you have.
Well, one of the things I think is interesting is, there was a time when I would look at all this and I would think, it's just people being dreamers, right? It's not reality. You can't just imagine that you're going to be doing this or you're going to be here in 5 years and it just happens just because you imagined it. That's not how it works. One of the things I think is important to realize is that we imagine way more than we even think. And it's habitual for virtually all of us. And one of the things I would, I would ask myself and ask anyone listening in here is like, have you ever had that time when it's just like you wake up, it's like, oh God, like I gotta go into work today and my boss is gonna be yelling at me, I got this problem, I have no idea how it's gonna work. I mean, when you're thinking this way, right? Like we're looking at this from the negative point of view, right? We were saying that our imagination can be used for good or bad. What's amazing is that we can go through our days and we can picture all the things that are going to go wrong. Someone comes to you with an idea, like, hey, I got this idea. Well, what do a lot of people do? They come at you with all the ways it's going to fail. Here's why it's not going to work.
Or it's like those days that you get up and it's just like, oh, the day's going to suck. And it's because something little's happened and you've let that get to you.
Oh, yeah.
And now you just envision everything going wrong. So guess what happens? Everything goes wrong.
Everything goes wrong. It might not be the exact way you imagine it going wrong, but it's probably a lot worse. What's interesting to think about, and what I'd encourage everyone to try here, is that realize that our imagination is constantly being employed, either for good or bad. It's important to realize, okay, when am I imagining things, or what are like my habitual patterns here? You might not be imagining you're flying through Neverland, like trailing Peter Pan and trying to catch up with him, right? But a lot of times we're imagining how our day is going to go, whether it's good or bad. And what's another interesting facet is that like the way our brains work and our subconscious mind works is that we tend to get what we focus on.
Yep.
Right? We tend to get what we focus on. So if you find yourself like, waking up and you're in a more like negative mentality and you're thinking about, oh God, like I got to do this when I go to work. I got to I forgot to make my lunch. I got to do all that. Now I got to spend money to buy my lunch because I didn't bring it with me and the kids are going crazy and I don't know what I'm going to do about this bill. And like when you keep going on and on, it's very rare that just everything works out for you and it's fantastic. You're going to be so like, caught unawares that you're not even going to see the good things that are happening because you're expecting the bad to happen. So it's like, why not try to cultivate the habits and start thinking, what could go right today? Man, maybe I'm going to go into work. Wouldn't it be awesome if just everything worked out? What would that look like? What would I feel like? What if I could actually go on that vacation that I wanted to go on? What if that car that I see kind of going into work every day that I'm so freaking jealous of, what if like that person's actually a good person, and what if I could actually have that car myself? And well,
that kind of ties in really nicely to our focus episode that we did.
Sure.
It's about being able to look way out.
Yep.
Look into the future, right? And if you can look into the future, then you can have control over where you're going from a focus perspective, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's what you're talking about. From a focus perspective, being able to see out ahead,
yep,
and then be in control. So if your day starts out bad, you're typically thinking everything's going to be bad because that's the mind frame that you've put yourself in.
Mm-hmm.
But you can change that because you have control over your mind over matter type thing.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can focus on something in the future, and that future is, guess what? Things are going to change.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be happy, or whatever it may be. I'm going to stop and I'm going to get whatever it may be, something as simple as a Coke or a candy bar,
yep,
or whatever. You stop and you get that candy bar, you're eating it, and then all of a sudden your day has changed because now you've put yourself in a completely different mindset.
Yep.
And now you've had that little splurge of happiness or enjoyment.
Yeah.
And so now you've recorrected. And now your entire day changes. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, Shane, but I was just thinking as you were talking through that about our focus episode and how that parallels.
Well, it's all good. And one of the things as well that I love about the imagination is like the imagination is the door, and basically the device that allows us to receive everything we want out of life instantaneously, right?
Wasn't there a rock band or something?
Doors
of Imagination. Yeah. They came up with a name or something.
No, that's not it.
Oh, okay.
But the great thing about the imagination is, well, let me back up. Why do we want the things that we want? Well, I would suggest that the reason we want the things that we truly want is not because of the thing, right? I mean, like, we want the things that we want because of the feelings we believe they're going to give to us upon receiving them.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? So that's why we want that vacation. Why? Because we feel free. We feel like let go of our obligations.
Going to detox. We can hang out with the family.
Enjoy the water or wherever you end up going, or the mountains, or I can ski and I can just have fun and life is great again. I mean, that's what we want. It's not, you don't want the mountain, right? You want the feeling the mountain gives you, right?
Exactly.
So the imagination is a tool that allows you to feel those feelings in the exact present moment, because you have to give yourself over to it. So one of the things I like to do every morning, just to put myself in a happy state. Again, the subconscious mind, when you really engage in this kind of stuff, cannot tell the difference between actuality and your imagined reality. So what I like to do each morning is, like, I have a particular memory that just, when I think I was 11 years old, 12 years old, something around there, I went with my family to the Florida Keys, and we were snorkeling over Sombrero Reef. I can't, like, every single day, I go back in my memory and I relive that moment. I mean, I can feel the water on my skin. I can see and remember the blue kind of tint of everything. I remember this particular parrotfish that was gnawing on some coral below me, and there was a big barracuda that was just kind of swimming next to me, and then this, the school of yellow fish. And I'm telling you, like, I live it every single day in my memory. I just allow myself to be there, and it just makes my entire day better. I just allow myself for those few minutes to be transported to that place of luxury and freedom. And what I tend to find is that as I do this more and more, and not just with that experience there snorkeling, but like I was saying before, thinking of good memories with my daughter, good memories at work, all these kind of things, I tend to find that those experiences happen more frequently, and I'm more aware of them, and my references typically begin to expand more and more, and the imagination session gets more and more vivid, and becomes more and more satisfying. So that's something I do every morning, and I think that's something you can do every day, even just taking 5 minutes, reliving 3 memories of yours that you just love. I think you'll find it's going to improve the quality of your life immensely, and allow you to feel that abundance that we all truly want.
Yeah, that's powerful. One thing that I will say for those out there that struggle with imagination and struggle with trying to see things, I've talked to many individuals about this. I don't necessarily have this problem, but I do know individuals that do just kind of struggle with imagination. They just are overwhelmed with just all the stuff that's coming in, that they struggle with seeing things in their head. And so one exercise that makes it easy for me sometimes, and also others that I've talked to about this, is print something out. Mm-hmm. Go to the computer, find something that you want to see in the mind's eye, and print it out.
Sure.
And look at it and practice seeing that when you close your eyes. Close your eyes. Smell what that image is showing you. Feel what that image is showing you. There's techniques that you can use to get your memory back if you've kind of lost this. And that will help you. And a lot of techniques that I even do, even though I can envision things in my head and I can put a stamp on it, like I see this, be here in 1 year. one thing that you can do, kind of in the physical world that kind of parallels to this, is take a picture of maybe where you want to go, or maybe whatever it may be, and print that picture out and write it down on that picture.
Yep.
And when you're talking about the subconscious mind, your mind is seeing that. So even though it's not seeing it in an imaginatory state and seeing it kind of in your head, as we've been talking about, your subconscious mind is still seeing it. So I believe that's just as powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you get into that routine, you will begin to find that you begin trusting in kind of what we're saying,
Yep.
and your imagination slowly and naturally will begin to come back to you. And you'll be able to use your imagination, how we're recommending using it for goal setting and being able to predict and see out into the future, and put yourself in this state of consciousness, to where you're helping and enabling yourself to get where you envision yourself being. So for those of you that are out there that are kind of having issues with this, just print something out, make it simple, and just write down what you feel about that image and what you want to accomplish, about what you see in that image. And I think you will absolutely surprise yourself with what we're saying.
I think there's one more little technique that you can do. I was mentioning before is the idea of references, right? And references are just kind of like mental touch points that you could keep going back to in your memory that will help make these imagination sessions more and more real. One of the things I like to do is if I'm like at the mall or in a section of town and like I have some free time and there's a car dealership, sometimes what I like to do is I like to go to that car dealership and I go inside to like the $100,000 cars that are like on display, like literally, and I look at them. I ask the guy, hey, can I sit in this? I just pretend like I am capable of buying it, just the way I carry myself. I ask myself, man, what would like someone insanely rich act like in this particular situation? And then you kind of like get in that state. You're already imagining. You start changing your posture and stuff. But I go up and I ask the guy, hey, may I sit in this car and just kind of take a look at it here? And they're always going to say, yeah, of course. And then so I go in there and I just pretend like it's my car, right? And the whole time I'm taking mental snapshots. What does the door handle feel like? When I sit inside, what does the leather feel and smell like? How does the handle, or how does the steering wheel like rest in my hands? Like how far away from my reach is the radio? What did the knob feel like whenever I turn it? I go through all this stuff. And I shut my eyes, I allow myself to push on the gas and the brakes, and I'm creating all these references, right? So what I do is I come back to my, I come back maybe the next day or that evening when I have some free time. I allow myself to try to relive that as detailed as I possibly can, and then I take it to the next level. Like, what would this look like if I were on the road? What would it make me feel like if, I got to where I was needing to go, and then like I get out of the car and just kind of look back and see like, man, that's mine. I don't think there's any harm in that. What it does is it makes you, it kind of enhances your quality of life a little bit.
Well, think about it this way. Think about whoever designed that car. They were obviously a sculptor, artist, whatever, and they had to envision the things that you're now physically touching.
Absolutely.
And you're using that to say, this is what I want, this is what I'll have one day. The sculptor and artist envisioned that out of nothing. This kind of loops back to what you were talking about in the beginning. So they had to pull that out of their head. And they eventually saw and felt all of these things in their mind's eye, in their imagination, in their head. And then they worked to sculpt and sculpt and sculpt and sculpt to bring this imaginatory thing into a physical presence to where now we can enjoy those things that we have today. So it's very powerful because they're using it to create the society that we live in today, the modern day society that we live in today as creators.
When who's to say like you're not going to be able to come up with an idea like that?
Exactly.
I mean, all it takes is a little willpower and determination, and just make it a reality rather than trying to like okay, I kind of imagine
Right.
making a car, like, let me just build it. No, it's like, that's too much. Like, but you can take little steps at a time, right? But it's possible for you to achieve those kind of things as well, and that's very exciting.
Leveraging your imagination to create your reality.
Exactly.
Well, cool. Well, we're at the 30-minute mark. Shane, you said you had a jingle. Are you going to sing this jingle?
No, I
every
gotta
time?
perfect it. It's gonna happen though, folks. It is gonna be stuck in your heads forever, and you'll never forget about this podcast.
All right,
project.
Cool.
ever.
Well, we're looking forward to that jingle, Shane, for our intro and our outro. But anyway, I hope this was valuable to everybody. Still looking for feedback, still looking for comments. So, please fill us in on what you guys want to hear about. If you guys want to know more about us, please email us or, drop us a question or comment in the comment section, and we will definitely answer those. Until next time,
Shane out. And
Brad out.
there you go. Thanks.
Thanks.